Welcome to Kaizen Time, part of the Blood, Sweat, and Business podcast, where we provide constant improvement to businesses through timely, actionable financial solutions. Do you want answers to your financial questions? Email us at bsp@kaizencpas.com. I'm your host, Mark Valesky. Now let's get started. Welcome to another episode of Kaizen Time. I'm joined by Eric Jorn, a partner here at the firm. Hey, Eric.
How's it going?
Well, pretty good. If I was a small business owner, why should I get some real estate? I already know the answer. I feel like I should as a homeowner. It's pretty obvious, right?
Yeah, but let's talk about, I get this question all the time. We hear this question across the firm all the time. Mm-hmm. And it's very hard to find a scenario where it doesn't make sense. So let's break this down. I'm an operating business, right? And I require a brick and mortar. So here's the first case where maybe it doesn't make sense. I don't require brick and mortar. Okay. We don't need a building to operate the business. All right. Let's shelve that conversation because almost every business we work with operates in type of something of real estate.
Yep.
So I'm a business operating a physical space. I need to pay rent. Mm-hmm. Now that's an expense for my business and, I operate there. That's kind of it, right? It's kind of cut and dry like that.
It seems to make pretty good sense, right?
Yep.
It's cutting into your profits. It's costing you something to be there.
Yep. So now say I buy the real estate, same issue, right? It's still cutting into my pockets. I'm going to have to pay myself rent. Mm-hmm. But say my business can afford the mortgage for that business and it's the same rent payment I'm paying otherwise. Mm-hmm. I now have an asset that is either going to stay the same value or increase over time that's not costing me more than the down payment out of pocket. So now I have likely an appreciating asset that at the very least cash flows enough money to just pay its expenses without costing me any more out of pocket. And say I buy a $500,000 building and it appreciates X amount a year. And let's say in 10 years when I pay off that building, I now have a $500,000 asset plus say it appreciated another $200,000. I now have a $700,000 asset that cost me really nothing out of pocket. Maybe I had to put down $50,000 or $100,000 in cash to buy the building itself up front. But really it's a no-brainer from a long-term investment standpoint, assuming that the numbers make sense.
Right. And before we get into making sure the numbers make sense, just tell me if this analogy is accurate. It'd be like me renting to live in an apartment versus me owning a house kind of situation.
Yeah.
So,
to a certain extent.
I mean, in so many ways, it's, hey, you're building more value into your business, having that property with your name on it. And as we've seen basically since the dawn of time, owning land appreciates. It's almost a guarantee.
Correct. So the reason why people love real estate for investing is it's one of the few investments in which you can acquire via leverage. Meaning is I can go out and get a loan to buy it and I have to part with minimal amount of capital to acquire that property. So that's why you see people, they will buy property after property after property. They put the minimum down. They finance the rest. As long as my debt service is covered, right? I can generate enough income to cover what it costs for me to own that property. At the end of that loan life, I now have likely an appreciated asset that's fully owned via cash. And I built wealth and you can rinse and repeat and do that over again. And I know I just made that super simplified and seem easy because it doesn't really work that way, right? You still have issues. Now you're responsible for all the maintenance, repair, and care for that building. However, from a long-term strategy, it makes a lot of sense. Now, from some non-financial benefits, let's talk about, or I guess not straightforward financial benefits. Let's talk about that. I'm working with a client right now and their landlord decided to sell a building. Mm-hmm. So now their options are I can close my business and just move on in life and go get a job, or I can move and start my business somewhere else. That's a pretty full situation that I had no control over because I didn't own the real estate.
And how much time did you have to be able to do this? I mean, so often we talk about planning on this podcast.
Yeah, this is true.
And so you don't have the time to do it, and just picking up all your, I mean, you think about how much you do during a day.
Yep.
Also, that's cutting into your operation of actually doing work, which is generating your profit.
Exactly. So that's a big item right there, right? It's control over the business. And then this actually kind of leads into the value of my operating business. So now I have two operating businesses. They have the same exact P&L, the same exact structure, same exact operation. Business one owns the real estate in which it operates from. Business two does not own the real estate. Which business do you think is more valuable?
The one that would own.
Correct, because they control their space. If you don't control the space, obviously that adds a risk component. Businesses are valued by cash flow times risk. So if you have a negative risk component, like, hey, I have to have a lease agreement with a landlord, third party. I got to bring a third party into my business, the landlord, huge risk component.
So what you're saying is, let's say one day you want to sell or retire or whatever, owning that land just brings it right up.
Exactly. Yep. Huge driver in value for an operating business.
Cool. Anything else?
Aside from that, I mean, real estate also can bring other tax benefits, right? So we buy the building, we can do something called a cost segregation study. I think we talked about that with Andrew on the Blood, Sweat, and Business podcast.
That's right.
So we can carve out assets in which we can accelerate depreciation on, get an upfront tax benefit for something that's normally needing to be taken over a long period of time. So that's a really nice tax benefit for that as well. And financing terms, again, for real estate is, again, super beneficial. Say I have a paid off piece of real estate and I want to go buy another business. Well, guess what? The bank will be happy to use the real estate as collateral to go get a loan. So it's actually going to increase your lending ability.
Oh yeah. Your leverage, right?
Yep. It's a lot easier to leverage on something like real estate because it's a very secure asset for a lender. Whereas just your operating business on its own is much less secure because you unplug a key component, like say me as the owner, all of a sudden the business can fall apart, right? But I can always sell the building and the land on the corner. It's still going to
be valuable, and its value is going to go up.
Exactly.
So let's go to the flip side. When doesn't it make sense to own the property?
Yeah.
The very rare chance.
Yeah. I mean, there's a few cases. If there's a period of time, and it's still kind of in that marketplace where office space, just very general office space, a bank building, and I own a suite within a bank building. That's getting less and less attractive as people are working more and more remote. So that real estate is not as valuable as it once was. Maybe you can get it for a lower amount and people start coming back to the office and you can win on that, right? That's a bet. Again, markets that are deflating, I guess you can say, they're at a premium and now all of a sudden you can see that they might trend downward in value. So it's like any investment, right? If the building's in disrepair, maybe there's some issues with EPA violations, right? There used to be a gas station there. They got underground tanks.
Gotcha.
Some risks there. Maybe my business is not stable enough to have predictable cash flow, right? So it's a lot easier to walk away from a lease than it is a mortgage.
Makes perfect sense. Yep.
Again, I don't have a brick and mortar, right? Then you're incurring a cost just to incur a cost. And again, right, maybe I have a very small sliver of brick and mortar space, right? I'm a small fraction inside of the building. My only option is to buy a big building that I don't really have the capital. Maybe I got to buy $1 million building and I don't have $100,000-$200,000 to put down on it. And I only have one small suite inside that building. Maybe that doesn't make sense. But if you occupy an entire building, that almost makes, it's very hard for that to not make sense.
If you already have the space, you need the space, you're using the space.
Yeah.
You should own the space.
Yeah. I guess one other option or one other situation, if I can't buy the space that I'm in and the only way for me to buy real estate is to move my business. Moving a business can be a very, very simple and easy thing, or it can be a very devastating thing for a business. So another thing to keep in mind, don't get too excited and say, oh, my friend told me to get real estate. So I'm going to move my business just so I can buy the real estate.
Yep. Something you should think about. And you should plan for, right?
Exactly. Everything, right? The more planned and prepared you are, the more you can deal with circumstances that are unknown.
Well, and fortunately, especially if you're renting a space and then you want to buy it, it's not like you have to do it over the course of a week, right? This is a planned thing. You're already in the space. You already know the person to talk to.
Yep.
So it can be a planned thing. Yeah.
Exactly.
Perfect. All right. Awesome. Thank you so much, Eric.
My pleasure.
You've been listening to Kaizen Time, part of the Blood, Sweat, and Business podcast. If you like what you heard, subscribe and leave a 5-star review. This podcast has been brought to you by Kaizen CPAs Plus Advisors, providing advisory and accounting services to help you grow your business. Learn more at kaizencpas.com or email us at bsb@kaizencpas.com.